Evening, guys. Tonight we're going to talk about influencing consumer behaviors. This is topic 5 of our SLT of our learning program. Well, I have put in this slide in your VLE so you can refer to your slide. So you need to refer to the slide so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so consumer behavior influence strategy is about what marketers try to do. Okay, meaning how do you how do consumer influence the strategies of the marketers? But basically, there are two options here. You may want to look at the consumer behavior and you devise your strategy based on the existing consumer behavior, or you do the other way around, whereby you devise a strategy to change the consumer behavior. For example, like right now, okay, during this restricted movement order, the behavior or the natural behavior is whenever you are given leave, you hang out with your friends, you go out, okay, you go to the malls. That's the natural behaviors of Malaysians. But you can devise a strategy to change that behavior. Alright, so how do you change that behavior? So what we're going to talk today is about the strategy based on the memories of the consumer. Means, how do you stimulate the memories? How do you get the consumer to memorize about your brand? And how do you get the consumer to recall your brand? And so these are the strategies that we're going to talk tonight. Right. Consumer behavior influence strategies. Remember about the wheel of consumer analysis in our previous lecture? Okay, it's the same thing, right? Consumer affect cognition and behavior lead to changes in the environment. Okay, cognitive. Okay, we talked about cognitive previously in our previous lecture. We all know that cognitive is about what happening inside your mind. So it's something that you can't see. Okay, because if you able to change the way the consumer think and feel, but you unable to get the consumer to act to that to act upon that feeling, it's useless. What are we going to do right now is you got the consumer to feel good about your product, but if the consumer did not act to buy your product, then it's useless, right? So the objective is to get the consumer to get up from their chairs and buy the product. So the objective is to maintain or increase the overt consumer behavior. So cognitive is about what happened in your mind. Overt is something that you can see, something that you can measure. Yep. Okay, now approach to influencing overt consumer behavior. One is to give information about the consumer's effect, cognition and behavior. You need to have that information. Then secondly, you stimulate. Okay, you stimulate the market by using the marketing mix, like the price, the promotions, the place, all that. And then that marketing mix stimulation will influence the consumer affect and cognition. And then after you affect the consumer affect and cognition, whatever they feel, whatever they think about your product, and it will hopefully it will influence the overt consumer behavior, meaning they acted upon that feeling. Then you do the market research based on the sales of the data or market share data, and then you go around again. Okay, this will happen in cycle. Okay, strategy designed to influence overt consumer behavior. The first strategy is effective. this strategy is to design to influence consumer effective response. How do you do this? By focusing on the consumer emotions, moods and feeling, like tonight is, let's say, tonight is raining, it just rained just now, so the feeling is feel relaxed. Okay, you feel relaxed. That's emotions, mood and feeling. What are the strategies? Some sample strategies is by conditioning emotions to product. Means you try to prime the consumer to the product. You try to get the consumer to be accustomed to the product. Okay. The second strategy is cognitive. Okay, cognitive strategy is designed by influence consumer cognitive response. Alright, meaning if you look at, let's say, this Starbucks, then what is your feeling? So what is your knowledge? Okay, the strategy focus is to get knowledge, believe in the meanings. Okay, you believe in the meaning of the product. For example, if I say Starbucks, for example, what is your feeling? Then I say what, Star Wars, for example, what is your feeling about Star Wars? Okay, no, don't touch your, okay, don't touch your nose, this is very dangerous, keep hygienic. And sample strategy is by providing information. Okay, you highlight the competitive advantage of your product. The third type of strategy is behavioral, meaning this strategy designed to influence consumer behavioral response. Okay, the first one, to shape the cognitive response. Behavioral is to shape the behavioral response. The focus is on the consumer overt behaviors. The sample strategy is to have positive reinforcement modeling desired behaviors. And last strategy is a combined strategy, whereby you combine two or more of effective cognitive and behavioral by influencing multiple consumer response. Means your strategy is to influence affective and cognitive, for example, or affective and behavioral, or all three. Okay, the ultimate objective is to influence the overt consumers' behaviors. Well, behavioral learning theories. There are three theories. Okay, classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and vicarious learning. Well, basically, classical conditioning is about stimulation. Okay, because according to classical conditioning, if you've been conditioned to certain stimulation, then you become accustomed. Okay, you become conditioned to that stimulus. For example, in Ivan Pavlov, for example, I think you may have heard about Ivan Pavlov, whereby they use neutral stimulus, which is a bell, unconditional stimulus like meat powder. Okay, what Ivan Pavlov did was, he did an experiment with a dog, whereby every time he ring the bell, he will put the meat powder at the mouth of a dog. He do this over the time to condition this dog to this stimulation, and later on, every time he ring the bell, even without putting the meat powder on the mouth of the dog will salivate. Alright, so meaning to say, the dog is conditioned that every time there's a bell was ring, when Ivan ring the bell, then the dog is conditioned to know that the dog will get some food. Okay, so the dog will salivate. So that is the meaning of classical conditioning. the marketing applications. The marketing application means what a marketer can take away from this classical conditioning is repetition. Okay, the first exposure is to create exposure awareness, and the second is to demonstrate relevance to the of the product to the customer, and that is to remind about the product benefit. Means you keep on repeating and reinforcing your brand to the consumer. For example, condition product association. Advertisement pair the product with positive stimulus to create desirable association. Like that, this one, Ivan Pavlov says, bearing meat. So it's like you equate or you try to link between advertisement and the desired association. You associate your product with something which is positive. Alright. Okay, there is some exercise that you can do on your own, whereby you can take a very classic product that have high nostalgic values to you. Okay, you can look at this classic product, and you try to tell yourself what when you see that product, what is the first thing that come into your mind, what is the memories that come together with the product. For example, let's say ice cream, for example. Okay, a cone of ice cream. So whenever you see that cone of ice cream, you may remember that you are eating the ice cream with your parents, so it evokes very good memories to you. So every time you see a cone of ice cream, you think about your parents. That is what you can do. Okay, so you can do this exercise on your own. Operant conditioning. Okay, it's also known as instrumental conditioning. There's a experiment performed for this operant conditioning, whereby a lab rat. Okay, a lab rat. Every time this lab rat push a red button, that red button will give a slight electric shock to this rat. But if the rat push the green button, then there will be food for the rat. So over the time, the rat will know that they don't push the red button, they will push the green button. So this experiment shows that you are learning to perform behaviors that produce positive outcome and avoid the negative outcome. But what is this relevant to marketing? Okay, marketing. So this is something that you can reinforce this to your consumer. For example, if you have a lot of sales, for example, every year in let's say in 2020, you put up a lot of sales promotion. So during sales, your store will be crowded, but after sales, no one will come to your stores. So this is something that you need to remember. So if you do this consistently, so the consumer will only come to your stores during sales. After sales, they won't come to your stores. Okay, so you need to this is something that a marketer need to remember. Fixed ratio reinforcement. Okay, reinforcement after fixed number of responses. For example, if you go to you wash your car in particular outlet, they will give you a loyalty card. Okay, after 10 visit, you get one free. So loyalty card is something loyalty card is an example of operant conditioning. meaning if you do it consistently, you will be rewarded. Okay, you don't do it, you don't get the reward. Vicarious learning. This one, okay, now we're talking about memories. Okay, vicarious learning. Vicarious learning is about you learn from a model. Like you go to school or you go to the lecture, you learn something. The lecturer, you look at the lecturer, then you base your behavior based on, you model your behavior based on that lecturer. Now, when we talk about memories, there are a few steps. Okay, there are steps. One is to get the attention, okay, of the consumer. Then you need to get that memory to be retained in the mind of the consumer. Then from that retention, you must be able to get the consumer to process and act based on that memories. Okay, that is the objective. So benefit of vicarious learning, okay, marketers need to show to consumer what is the impact of using or not using the product. Okay, meaning to say, let's say you use brand A skincare. Okay, you use the brand skincare brand A, then you will get the attention from your crush, for example. So this is something, the benefit of vicarious learning. Okay, meaning you try to tell the consumer what is the benefit of using that particular product. So in the memory, okay, you have, how do you get the memory? First, you get the external input, means you observe or you learn. Is the input is external. Then after you get the information, you try to encode. Okay, it's like a computer. You encoded that memory or the data in your mind. Then you store the data in your mind. Then when you need that particular data, you retrieve that data. Okay, so your mind is just like a computer. How our brains encode information is just like computers. But the data can be senses, from what you see, what you taste, what you smell, what you hear. Okay, it's sensory, colors and taste. Okay, sensory, your senses. Okay, your senses. How do you get these senses to react? For example, a narrative, a story effectively convey product information. Okay, last time when we talk about stories, stories is an effective tool to market your product instead of lecturing. Okay, everyone love stories, nobody love lectures. Okay, that's why whenever you have stories, it's easier for you to remember stories rather than remembering lectures. So when you market your product, okay, when you market your product, you need to give a narrative. Okay, a narrative about your product. When I talk about narrative, meaning you're telling stories about your product. Okay, what is your narrative? What is your story of your product? Alright, and memory system. This sensory memory, short-term memory, long-term memories. Okay, all this is common sense. And how do you store information? How do you store information? By associative network. Remember, my lectures, for example, okay, I always use photos. I always use pictures next to the point that I wanted to make. Why? Because I want you to associate that information with the particular pictures. So whenever you look at the picture, then you remember about the picture and it comes together with the information. So it's one way of memorizing information. So that's the same thing, and when you market your product, you try to associate your product with something which can be easily recalled. For example, if you are hungry, you associate your product with, let's say, Kit Kat, for example. Okay, so that's how you associate your product. For example, now Wuhan, for example, you associate Wuhan with a virus. So that's every time I talk about Wuhan, you associate Wuhan with virus. So that's an example of associative network. The most important thing is how do you retrieve that memories? How do you get the consumer to retrieve the memory about your brand? Why older people can recall their old memories rather than their daily prescription, means their daily medicine prescription. Why? Okay, because we can only recall something that we give attention to. Something we can only recall memories that give good memories, things that we wanted to remember. We can't recall something that we do not want to remember. Okay, for example, research shows that for printed ads and printed advertisement, for example, people are more likely to remember spectacular magazine ads like multi-page spread, 3D pop-up, scented ads with audio components. Alright, meaning when you, for example, like greeting cards, when you open the greeting card, it's pop up with scented, scented cards. Easy for you to remember, right? And what make us forget? Old age. Okay, you getting old, you forgot things. But then again, the question, the early question about why old people can remember what happened to them during their younger days, but they forgot about their daily medicine prescription. That is an interesting question. The television ads, for example, they put in ads which may have relevancy with the show. Okay, for example, let's say football show, for example, then you have an advertisement. So the advertisement will show people playing football as well. So they're associating their advertisement with the theme of the show. Alright. Picture versus verbal. Okay, which one do you like, picture or verbal? Which one can you more remember, picture or verbal? Okay, so if you say that picture makes more impact, then how to make that picture more impactful, or how to make that picture give more messages to your consumer? Remember I think last week or previous lecture I talked about subliminal messages. That is basically what I'm trying to say. So the power of pictures. Okay, the power of pictures. Well, basically, why subliminal messages is so effective in giving messages, because visual memory is better than verbal memories. Why it grab more attention. Although picture is not necessarily improve understanding. Okay, for example, if I show you a picture of a cow, so what do you understand about the cow? So in order to get how to get improved understanding about the subject matter, then you need to make sure more cues like text, photos, colors, maybe videos. You put that in the picture. Yes. Marketer power of nostalgia, for example. Have you maybe you aware that all the 80s pop group or rock group, they do a reunion concert? Why? Because maybe Okay, maybe this is something that you need to further investigate or research. When the 80s group, they do a reunion concert, for example, they will attract consumers which are familiar with the songs of this pop group. So when they go to the concert, why they go to the concert of this reunion concert, you know that, because they wanted to remember the experience or the memories which come within that era. Okay, for example, 80s group, when they do reunion concert in the year 2000 or 2020, for example, so those who are those who live in the 80s, when they go to the reunion concert in 2020, reason why, because maybe they wanted to relive, they wanted to remember the good old days. So this perhaps the explanation why older people can remember about their younger days, what happened to them during their younger age, compared to the current thing that they forget about their daily medicine prescription. So that may be the explanation, right? All right, that's all. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Here, Turtle. All right. So next week I'm going to tell you about your new group assignment. Your individual assignment is still the same, but we're going to change the group assignment, right? Group assignment. So I'm going to talk about group assignment in the next video, so stay tuned. Just be aware, just look up your VLE for the latest instruction about your class and your assignments. Okay, until then, may the force be with you. Stay safe, right? Bye.